Okay, I gotta make a quick video about wind and when you're camping in areas where you know there's gonna be high wind. So today, we're in the Lava Beds National Monument. This is our third day here. We leave tomorrow, and it's the windiest it's been. Had a little bit of wind pickup yesterday, but nothing bad, nothing crazy. So this is our setup. So we got this big 6-man Coleman tent, which I would not recommend, but we're using it now, so I don't have to go buy another tent. But we'll do a review video on this at some point, and I'll explain to you all the points of failure and bad design. But you can see we got two of our guy lines out that are on our little screened in porch area. And when we got here and set this up, even though it wasn't windy, I know from experience that we're here in a deserty environment. There's like no trees. You can see off across the valley. I mean, potential for high winds here is probably very high on a daily basis. And if you get days where you don't have wind, then consider that a blessing as long as it's not too hot. The good thing about the wind, though, I'll say this, is that if it's not hot, it makes the heat more manageable. So if you get in the shade, like we're sitting in the shade just hanging out, it's over 90 degrees, but the wind is nice, so it keeps the heat down. We added this tarp. We bought this inexpensive tarp at Walmart in the camping section before I bought a big pop-up tarp. So I wanted to try it and see before I put in $100 or $150 on a really nice overhead system. What this allows us to do is have some cover for shade and for potential water issues, like if it rains or if there's heavy dew, it'll shed that away from our tent without having to have our rain fly on, which limits the amount of air blowing through the tent, especially because it's so hot here. This has been a good setup. It comes with 6 guy lines. It's a little bit of a mess getting it out of the box, setting it up, because all these lines are attached, and it'd be better if they were individual and you added them. It does have, oh, one of my legs just fell over. So you can see how hard the wind is blowing. It does have these other loops that you can add more guy lines to it, and we have extra that we would add if I really thought we needed it. But even with this setup, the wind is gusting so hard that it is popping some of our tent pegs out of the ground, and we're having to restake them. So it isn't a complete failure, but it's being pushed with this gusting wind. I would say the wind's gusting probably 20-25 miles an hour. You can see this thing just fell out because there's no top connector. It's just a pin that sticks up through a grommet in that tarp, and if the wind pops it up too high, then the leg falls over. Not a big deal. So that's our setup. Now our Rainfly has more guy lines attached to it, and if we had the Rainfly on, we would run those out and secure them. The body of the tent does not have any guy lines, even though we could probably add some of our extras. But I want to show you this. This guy came in last night after dark. He's out in a more open area, and he did not put out his guy lines. So we've been watching his tent, and I would like to go over there and I'd like to secure it for him, but I don't know him. I don't know how he'll react. I don't know if he's got things in his tent he doesn't want other people to see, and it's barely hanging on. But a couple of things: you always stake out your guy lines, especially in a deserty flat environment. And the other thing that we do is that when we get our tents come with those little short metal L-shaped stakes. We always go and buy these bigger orange, they're like 8-inch stakes, and even those sometimes, in particular in certain types of dirt, won't hold if it's not a good bite. But we replace all of our stakes. So with that tent, we went and bought 6 stakes that we could kind of secure the tent better. But you can see this guy's tent, and I feel sorry for him. I keep rooting for him, hoping that he'll show up, but there's no telling where he's at. And then you got these guys behind us. So they got 2 tents. They got that little tent, like a 3-man or 4-man dome tent that's on the ground. It's doing okay, except they left their tent unzipped when they went out for the day. But they got this big, blocky, probably 6-8-man tent that when they were setting it up last night, I helped them because they couldn't get it set up. So they're up on that tent pad. You can see there's another tent pad right there. Those tent pads are close to 2 feet probably up off the ground, and they're really great for small tents and when there's rain, because they'll drain the water away. You're not on this kind of this chalky, pasty, caliche type ground that gets all nasty. Those are great to mitigate rainfall. But they won't, and I suggested that their tent was too big for that pad. They still wanted to put it up there, so I helped them a little bit. They got it up there, and then everybody had a night, and then they got up and left this morning. Well, the wind picked up, and guess what happened? Because of the higher profile, by being up 2 more feet in the air, and the actual overall size of that tent to begin with, the wind just knocked it off that tent pad. And again, I'd like to go over there, I'd like to help them, I'd like to set their tent up, but it's not my place to be the campground maintenance man. I'm not the camp host. There is no camp host in the park at this point in the season because we're into September already, and I wish them the very best. The other thing is they left a lot of their stuff out. This is like bad policing of your food stuff, your utensils, everything, and they're getting trash blown all over the campground. So my point of this video is that in some places like a forest, we have lots of tree cover. You probably don't need to worry too much about putting out your guy lines. But when you're out in the open, you gotta stake your tent, man. You gotta have longer stakes for your tent footprint. So replace the shitty stakes that they send with the tent, and then put out your guy lines. And even then, you could still have 1 or 2 lines come loose, but at least you have a better chance of coming back and not finding your camp like that or like that. Happy camping.